Hey, what up guys? And in this one, I'm doing a one-man self-scramble, and this time I'm doing the worst ball challenge. So normally, in a scramble, you hit one good shot and you're good to go. This one, it's like you have to hit two good shots in a row, and it really identifies some, gaps and inconsistencies in your game. That being said, I kind of got around that by not hitting driver too many times off the tee. I ended up using a driving iron, which, that's kind of like my go-to club if I want to hit the fairway. So in a worst ball scramble, I relied on that really heavily. So let's head out to the course and see how I did. All right, like I said, I'm going to be leaning heavily on the driving iron today. And like I said, this one hit it dead in the middle. All I have to do is repeat the same swing and it should have the same result, right? But unfortunately, don't do the same thing. It ends up going to the right and I'm in a not so great lie behind some trees. So taking that exact same club, all I do is I just punch it out and I hit this next one into the fairway where I can get my next shot onto the green. So hey, that actually worked out pretty well, and these balls end up being quite close to each other. So as you can see, not too much distance between the two. And I did say I was going to rely heavily on this driving iron, and I'm hitting it again. So here's the first shot. End up hitting it a little bit chunky, but just right in front of the green. So I'm thinking, okay, just got to do the same exact thing. And this one goes left and off to the side. So this one went a little bit further, but I was in the rough. So technically, I think this was a worse off position. So here's my first chip, left it low. I was like, oh man, probably can't get much worse than that. So I chip again, and this one ends up being long and over the green, and actually just rolls off onto the fringe. So you can see my selection between the two, the lower one or the top one, which one's worse. Could be debatable, but I think the downhill putt from off the fringe is definitely worse. So here's my putt. Not bad. Pretty much saved what could have been an even extra stroke. And so what I do is just put these ones in. And we start off with a bogey. So this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. Hope you guys aren't tired of seeing the driving iron. You're going to see a lot more of it. This first one, I pipe it down the center. And I'm set up pretty good. All I got to do now is repeat the same swing, right? Just come on. Maybe take a little more aggressive line. And I end up just drawing it and tugging it ever so slightly. So this hole's a dogleg right, and now I'm further from the hole. So here's my next shot. And this one, yeah, I just flare out to the right. And, once you hit a bad shot in the beginning, you're like, oh, not very motivated to hit another shot. So this one ends up being closer to the green, off and to the left. But definitely the first shot ends up being bad anyway. So here we go, chipping on. This one ends up being short in the fringe. Kind of caught up in the thick stuff. I was like, oh, I can't do any worse than that. But actually I did. And it went into the sand trap. So now I'm chipping out of the sand. Here's my first hand shot, a little shorter. So I try to make a good effort on my second shot. Hit a little harder, and wish I could have done that on the first one. So now I got to chip on or putt on to the green. All right, so here's my first putt attempt, and honestly, not too bad. So luckily, I get close enough to where I'm pretty confident in making that. So I just have to get this one just as close, and I leave it a little bit shorter, but these are just tap-ins. So tap these in, and to get my double bogey. So I'm already 3 over through 2 holes. So hitting driving iron here again, and this one ends up being in the middle of the fairway. I just hit it a little bit chunky, so it didn't go all that far. So on my second shot, I tried to take a really good backswing and hit it pretty good. It went a lot higher than the other one. I think the shot tracer went too high, but yeah, that one ended up being a little better, so I took my first one. Next up, I hit a decent shot to the green. It ends up being a little bit short because I hit it a little bit chunky. So I was like, don't mind being there. And my next shot ends up being a little bit closer on the left side, just chipping. So I actually have a decent chip length into the green. So here's my first chip. And yeah, not that great in an effort here. So I was like, okay, can't get any worse than that. And ultimately, I just didn't want to duff a chip and have to chip on again. So if I have a putt, then I'm okay with that. So here's my first putt from off the fringe. And yeah, not a good first effort. So this is kind of where you fear about worse balls. Is like when you hit one really bad shot and you just know that you're definitely not going to make both of those putts. So you're going to have to take at least one extra stroke than you anticipated. So here's that extra stroke that I'm going to be taking now. Here's my attempt. And yeah, and basically you need that first putt confidence to make sure it's close enough to where you're going to make the next one, and you can't screw up your secondary. putts. So that's what makes this challenge a little difficult, especially in the putting. So yeah, just knock those both in. Another double bogey, 5 over. Alright, first par 3 in this challenge, and I am clubbing up and just doing more of a punchy, abbreviated swing. And this is just to, take out any variables from a long swing that you can get, like the flare outs or the pulls. So end up just kind of just taking a long chip, and both end up in the front of the green. So this one ends up just off, and I take the putter just to eliminate any potential big mistakes. And the first one just goes an okay distance, so now I have to hit a lot harder than that. And yeah, so now since I know I didn't make the first one, the second one is more just for blind. And so here's me lining up my next putt. And these were actually really, really close. And surprisingly, once you get one putt and one feel in, technically you should be able to make the next one. So yeah, end up getting bogey on this hole because my worst ball stayed out. Driving iron again. This one I just chunked it up into the left, but luckily this is a very short hole, so even a chunk is actually okay here. And this one I end up hitting really, really good. So yeah, always trying to hit 2 shots in a row that are consistently good is pretty difficult. Next up, just take out the driving iron again from the ground. And this one ends up being chunked a little bit short. And the next one that I hit, I end up tugging it ever so slightly to the left. And that one ends up being, I believe, into the rough. So instead of taking the one that's straight in front of the green, I'm just chipping off from the rough on the left-hand side. So as you can see, this is my chip. This one I've left way below the hole, didn't even give it a chance. And this next one, I think I didn't compensate enough, and I'm still below the hole, which is just okay. But I end up rolling it, way too far. So this is my attempt in the putt. Yeah, and luckily that first putt was pretty good, so I kind of got the feel and distance, so I can just repeat the same stroke. And then I end up not giving it up an extra stroke on the putting. Any 2 putts within a worst ball scramble is actually really, really good. So there it is. There's my bogey, 7 over. Alright, driving iron again. This one's a dogleg right, and it's pretty short. And the first one I hit just beautifully perfect in position, and I just need to repeat that. And unfortunately, if it's a dogleg right and you end up pulling it to the left, you add way more yardage to the hole. So now I have, instead of a 130 yard hit, I only have a 150 yard hit. So this one comes up. I end up hitting a really good shot. This is probably the best shot of the day. And this was like only a foot away from the hole. I didn't know it was that close. So I was like, okay, just need to repeat it. And then I chunk it. So you can see my frustration here. You hit one really good shot, but it doesn't matter if you hit your second shot way worse. This is where I ended up. So that being said, here's my first chip. Hit it way too hard and rolled it past. And I actually didn't really compensate for that, and I did the exact same thing. So I'm putting it above the hole downhill. But look at, yeah, this is where my original ball from the approach from the fairway landed. And this is what I have to deal with now. Alright, so here's the first putt. Didn't hit a really good roll on it, and I learned my lesson and marked my ball. And this is now just to get distance and feel because the first one was short. Here's my another attempt to try to make this, and I missed it. So I know I'm gonna not, don't have the option of holding out here, so I just try to hit another one just really quickly, and I end up 3-putting. So unfortunately picked up another double, and now your boy is 9 over. This is a struggle for real. Alright, since on the first par 3, I try to do something gimmicky, here I just went for full swing and going directly at the target. And surprisingly, I get both of these on the green. So hey, I'm finally on the green in regulation. No missed fairways, no missed shots into the green that I have to account for. And here's the first putt. And it ends up being pretty dang good. Maybe like a foot and a half past. And here's my next putt. It's looking good, it's looking good. And I almost hole this one. It was insane. So here take a look at how close my second putt was. That's where it was. And here is my next attempt. So focusing really hard on these 5-footer, 4-footer, 5-footer. Make the first one, put the same stroke on it, and miraculously, your boy gets a par. So first par of the day. Felt like it was really tough and well earned. So going to the next hole. So no driving iron here. Put out the driver, and what I did is what I feared, and I popped it up into the right. So can't do much worse than that, so I'm really just going to go for it and just make sure I don't hit it out of bounds and hit it perfectly in the middle. Go figure. So I had to deal with this shot that ends up popped up short and to the right, and I just want to get into the fairway. So I take out a low iron, end up just doing a slight fade into the front of the green to just give me an approach that I can handle. And I pretty much do the same thing for both of them, but the second shot didn't end up fading as much, so I'm taking the second shot. So worst ball scrambles do identify where you need to work on your game, and for me, approaches around the green are no exception. The first one ends up being shortened to the right, so I compensate a little bit more and get this one onto the green. But yeah, that first one wasn't that good, so I'm pretty much working from off the green and putting. So here's my first putt. Ends up being a little bit short. And here comes my next putt. Just got to make sure I don't do any worse and just get a little closer. So I end up doing that. And here are my next putts. So here's my last one, and I end up getting a bogey. So yeah, basically my approaches off the green are not being close enough to where I'm pretty sure I can maybe faithfully make 2 putts in a row. No chance so far. So as you can see on this next hole, par 5, however, I am taking the driving iron. And I guess I'm getting a little fatigued here because my second one, I just chunked the crap out of it. So yeah, this one ends up being short and right after my first one being pretty good. Next up, I hit the first one of the driving iron into the center of the fairway. I was like, okay, just please make the same swing. And here comes the attempt. And as you can see, I don't make the same swing. And this one flares out to the right. So it's just like, dang, I'm really hurting myself here on these second swings. So maybe I should just focus a little more. But here's my approach into the green. This first one ends up just being short of it, right in front of it. So I was like, okay, don't mind that if that is the worst ball of the two. But I end up making a worse swing, and this one goes into the sand trap. So instead of being right in front of the green, I'm in the bunker on the right. So here's my first sand shot, and the bunkers here are actually in pretty good shape. So I was able to get some sand. And here's my second one. Just don't want to blade it or stay in the trap. So end up getting both out and both in pretty good position. Probably the best approach of the day. So here's the first putt. And here I'm just thinking, just get the first one close and get the second one close where I have just easy tap-ins. So what happens here is pretty much I do that and very makeable putts just to clean up for bogey. So only one par in this whole thing, but here's my bogey attempt. Just laying down another ball. Yeah, and as you can see, overall total score was 11 over. Alright, as you can see, didn't shoot the best. I really tried to shoot bogey golf or better, but did a little bit worse than that. But had a good time, and it really exposed some inconsistency in my game. Obviously, I knew that my approaches into the green weren't great, and then once you magnify that twice by having to try to hit 2 approaches into the green and take the worst result of those 2, it really just exposes the fact that you need to work on X, Y, and Z. Putting was actually pretty solid. The approach was not great. It was kind of, 50-50. But yeah, approaches into the green can definitely work on. And then obviously getting more confidence off the tee. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Hope you guys liked getting my butt kicked. More to come, and I'll see you in the next one.